Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, as Nigeria steps into 2026 with renewed determination and national resolve, the year is widely seen as critical for turning bold government plans into real, measurable progress. Now, after years of policy announcements and structural reform blueprints, 2026 brings a deliberate shift towards implementation and accountability. At the heart of this effort is President Tinubu's vision of transforming Nigeria into a $1 trillion economy by 2030. Now, delivering on this promise means stronger institutional discipline, sharper enforcement of new laws, and using technology to strengthen governance across sectors. Tonight, we explore the major government policies that will dominate Nigeria's public agenda in 2026. These initiatives are expected to have a deep impact on businesses, households, investors, and citizens. By mapping out what lies ahead, Tuesday Live will give insight into the direction of economic and social change for Africa's largest economy. The program will focus on stepping up in 2026. But before we get started, let's see this report by Goodluck Enaini.
The basic aim of the federal government's Renewed Hope agenda is to improve standard of living for all Nigerians through a comprehensive national development plan built on 8 presidential priority areas, including economic reform, national security, education, and enhanced infrastructure. It is in aligning with the federal government that the Edo State government developed its project level, leading to some monumental achievements recorded across the sectors in the last 1 year. With the Renewed Hope agenda, education policy in Edo is now people-centered, following massive infrastructure, upgrade of public schools to modern standard, recruitment of permanent teachers to address shortage of manpower. There has been a financial boost for tertiary institutions' monthly subvention for optimal performance. Student support and learning has seen the introduction of Edu Rescue Program, which was launched to provide quality education to underprivileged children. To ensure that no Edo child is left behind and promote inclusivity, the state government approved the sum of 1 billion naira bursary scheme for Edo indigenes in the tertiary institutions, and also adopted the federal government Nelford program.
We have raised the bar that even those that do not like to put their children in public schools are now hustling to move their kids because of the standard we are bringing to bear, as it were. Even in terms of policy and programs.
The state has witnessed expansion of critical infrastructure needs under the Renewed Hope agenda of the federal government in order to enhance transportation, boost economic activities, create jobs, and improve connectivity. Notable among them is the 408 meters long ongoing Ramat and Adesua flyover projects meant to address traffic congestion in those axes.
Before this time, at this time you can't pass here, but now look at it, very good. So this work of a flyover being done here is a good work.
It will boost the economy of the state and it will reduce the go-slow at this over here.
The state government has been able to take over the reconstruction of some of the deplorable federal government roads, like the Benin-Sapele Road, just as remedial works is being effected on failed portions of the Benin-Ekpoma-Auchi Federal, in addition to ongoing road construction across the 3 senatorial districts.
Keen into Mr. President, Renew Hope agenda, developmental strive. I think I've not even done anything yet. We'll continue to strive hard to see that we develop our state. That is the essence of my people voting for me.
With the functional governance in Edo states championed by the Renewed Hope initiative, citizens hope to see more development in 2026 and beyond.
All right. That sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guests. We'd like to welcome to the program tonight Dr. Kayode Okpefa is Managing Director, Nigerian Railway Corporation. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Right. We're also joined tonight by Dr. Ifeanyi Oputa. He is Director General, Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. He joins us from our Lagos studio. Thanks for being with us tonight. Joined by Dr. Ifeanyi Oputa, Director General, Nigerian Association. He joins us from our Lagos. Okay, all right. Well, I do believe that you can hear us loud and clear. Whatever hitches we may be experiencing at this initial side, we'll fix them as we go on in the program. But again, we've chosen to call this Stepping Up in 2026. There's a whole lot which we'll be talking about tonight. Areas of growth, just how Nigeria can begin to set the stage for the proposed $1 trillion economy by 2030. Well, the journey starts now. But yes, and well, I can confirm that we are also being joined right now by Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. He joins us via Zoom from Lagos. Dr. Muda Yusuf, good to see you.
Yeah, good evening, and good evening to my very good friend, right, Dr. Okpefa. Great to see you.
All right. So, going by what we introduced that we're going to do today, let's even start off with you, Dr. Muda Yusuf. And we're beginning with the economy. Just give us a brief look into how the economy, the Nigerian economy, performed in 2025 and what the expectations are for 2026.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. The economy in 2025, as has been widely acknowledged by many economic commentators, was an economy that has gained tremendous stability. Because when you compare the state of the economy in 2025 with what happened in 2023 and 2024, you see that there has been a remarkable improvement. We have seen a remarkable, elevation of investors' confidence. We have seen, drastic reduction in volatility in major economic variables. We have seen the exchange rate stabilize significantly, and in some cases, even some, marginal appreciation of the exchange rate. We have seen also a significant deceleration in inflation, even though some people will argue that, they are not feeling it. But the reality is that some prices have actually been coming down in 2025. And we have seen situations where, because of the confidence in the economy, our international trade process has also improved. We have seen remarkable improvement in our balance of trade position. We have been recorded balance of trade surpluses for most parts of 2025. And even internationally, those of us that travel abroad will confirm just an evidence of credibility of the economy and the currency. People can now use their Naira debit cards abroad, to do foreign dollar-based transactions. That's a measure of the credibility that we now have. And look at our results. Our reserves has also improved significantly. That has also inspired a lot of confidence in both domestic and foreign investors. We are no longer importing as much petroleum products as we used to, thanks to the Dangote refinery and other refineries in the country. And that has also helped to ease the pressure, on our foreign exchange and also help our macroeconomic stability. So largely, from a macroeconomic point of view, we have seen a remarkable improvement. And even on the fiscal side, we have also seen some improvement. In your background stories and reports, we saw what state governments have been doing. And these things are happening on the back of the fact that as a result of the reform, the allocations to the states have improved tremendously. So many of them are now able to embark on projects. They're able to clear areas of pensions, areas of salaries, supporting different sectors, embarking on some infrastructure projects. So generally, I will say that the economic shocks that we suffered at the inception of this administration, those shocks are beginning to fizzle out. So we have experienced significant stability. We are now in the phase of ensuring that we have growth and ensuring that we have a trickle-down effect of this macroeconomic stability to improve the welfare of the people, to create more jobs, and also strengthen our structural environment. I think that is where we are for now. But 2025 has been a very, very good year as far as stability of the economy is concerned.
All right, thank you so very much. And we'll ask the other discussants to give a brief on what they think happened in 2025, high points, and perhaps some of those things we'll be looking out to improve on in 2026. But back here in Abuja studio, Dr. Kayode Okpefa is here with us, and easily we would ask you to take a cursory look at what happened in 2025 and see those areas that Nigeria could well say were significant improvements, or some others that you might begin to think maybe it's time to work on those for 2026.
Yeah, having someone like Dr. Muda Yusuf speaking on the economy, I better stay away from that side. So it's better I maintain my lane. I would rather take a cue from one of his closing remarks that the economy moved to stabilization, and what we expect in 2026 is growth. And I will focus more on the mobility sector.
Right.
Now, in the last 3 quarters or so, the Bureau of Statistics data have shown that the mobility sector played a significant role in the growth of the economy, especially the rail sector, which I'm one of those pretending. And what that tells us is practically the same thing as we also witness in the physical sense, that the sector is gradually stabilizing, not just at the national level, and is poised for growth. You can see new mass transit buses springing up in Lagos. I'm not saying that there was never any, but new ones. You've seen what is going on in FCT, see what is going on in Borno, what is going on in Kaduna, what is going on in Enugu, Anambra, and the rest. So we're now moving from the stage of paratransit, that is vehicles below 20 people capacity. We are now moving to the mass sector. Same thing you have seen in the rail sector. We have moved from the intensive care unit. We've stabilized, and we expect to see more growth. And when you go into the aviation sector, you've seen more airlines, companies joining the fray, and Eagle, United, and so many of them are joining, and gradually the capacity within that sector is also improving. And when you compare to previous years, the instability in that sector has also reduced. So you've seen more stability. When you go into the water transportation, we have some hiccups from continuous series of incidences on the waterfront. But basically, what you've also seen in states like Lagos and some of the is that there is now increased capacity. People are now manufacturing CNG boats, CNG ferries, and the introduction of mass capacity ferries. And the same thing you can take around in the maritime sector. We are now back into the IMO, and the economy from that sector is speedily increasing. In fact, competing with the oil sector, the situation in our port system has improved. We are now we are no longer in the era of traffic congestion on roads into Apapa. A lot of people still mention congestion roads. No, that's not true. You need to go to Apapa, you don't have those trucks parked on the road. And sometimes when you see rush into the port, it's because of the increase in capacity or our volume of our business to be done there. So basically, 2025 in the mobility sector defines stability in the sector, and what we should be looking forward to is now growth.
Okay. We'll return and look at some of the things we should watch out for in 2026. But let's go over to our Lagos Center, our Lagos Network Studio, and join Dr. Ifeanyi Oputa, who is DG of Nigeria Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. And let's hear your opening comments on how good it was in 2025, if it was indeed good, and perhaps what could be better in 2026.
Um, 2025, if you look at it compared to the situation we had when the very serious reforms happened in 2023, that created what you can call an earthquake in the economy, where everyone was looking for the way around it. Prices were skyrocketing, there was just a run on the economy, essentially. 2024, it began stability, and 2025 was a year of where you could plan. Whether planning at the new Naira rate, the new Naira value, whether that kind of planning was possible for the small person is a different conversation. For the medium and large players, it's pretty easy to pivot and survive the new situation on ground. But for the very small business players, it's been a very big struggle to survive because the new realities, the new prices of fuel, of transport, of the whole range of things for small business people who were already gasping for air. There's a lot we need to do this new year to get them properly included in the economy. So these new reforms, this new stability rubs off positively on the real players in the economy. Those are the people who make our economy work, and they're pretty much hidden. They've always been hidden in our country. They've always been below the radar, and that's why even when we talk about a $1 trillion economy, we may get there before we know we're there, because we don't presently know the real economy's value. We don't really know, because most of the small players who have always been in the background haven't been convinced that they should show their true operations to the government. So these things keep everyone guessing. I'll expatiate further later. Yes.
Okay, thank you so very much. And as one thing you talked about, which we've noted here, that it was a big struggle for the small persons, the small players to survive in 2025. So if we take it from that premise and look at 2026 and say, what are those things that we must begin to address critically in 2026 as to ensure that these small players do not have to struggle? And let's start off with Dr. Muda Yusuf, who I'm sure listened to you and heard your earlier statements. Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Yes, I listened to the DG of NASI. I agree with him to a large extent. But when we talk in relative terms, of course, he also alluded to it. When you compare the situation in 2025 with the situation in 2024, even for the small businesses, there was a remarkable improvement. Just as he said, you cannot plan better, even though the rates are still a bit high, but the situation has been much better. And of course, we should also acknowledge, because it's not as if it was all, so good. I think we must also emphasize that. We didn't like, most of us were not comfortable with what the experience we had with budget implementation, for instance. I mean, it was a very embarrassing situation. That you have situations where budget could practically not be implemented. I'm talking about the capital budget of 2025 and all this issue of overlapping budget and all of that. That was not a good story, for 2025. And of course, we also had issues with insecurity. Insecurity, the harder we try, the more difficult it seems. The thing to be looking, to be, manifesting. So the insecurity problem, of course, for those who are in that berth, they cannot be talking of, a very good economy in 2025. Because, take agriculture, take the people who are in IDP camps and so on and so forth. For those people, they were also part of the economy. That was not a particularly good year for them. Then on the fiscal side, of course, our debt situation and our debt service burden was also very high. It took a toll on the fiscal side, and it's also affected the capacity of the government, to properly implement the budget. So debt management issues was also a very big issue. And on the monetary side, the central bank did a very good job in 2025, but again, there was also the flip side. In the process of tightening monetary policy, the businesses suffered very serious challenges as far as interest rates was concerned. People were borrowing money at 30%, at 35%. That was very tough. Yeah, certainly, we acknowledge that it was part of the process of the CBN trying to curb inflation, stabilize the exchange rate, but we must acknowledge that that was a major challenge in 2025. So having said that, going forward to 2026, and I'll start with the budget, and the president was very emphatic when he was presenting the appropriation bill to the National Assembly, that the experience we had in 2025 will not repeat itself. When we almost had about 3 budgets running concurrently, overlapping and so on. And the president has given clear directives, to the critical organs of government, particularly the ministers in the economic ministries, Minister of Finance, Minister of Budget, Director of Budget Office, that the budget must henceforth be firmly and effectively implemented. The president was very clear about that. And that the backlog that we had in 2025, everything must be cleared by 2026, first quarter. So we are looking forward to that. Because if we're able to stabilize the budgetary space, that also has very significant impact on the economy. Those of us, people in the private sector, whose businesses also interface with government, whether they are contractors, whether they are suppliers with government, they will also be able to plan and to be able to do their businesses better. Then we look forward to better situation with the security. The government is now partnering with the United States and some other partners to ensure that we have a much better secure environment. Because without security, you practically cannot do anything. It takes people who are in those areas for us to share their experiences, and we know that it's a nightmare to be in a situation where you are constantly living in fear. So the security issue, I think, for me, is something that we need to look forward to. And we need to also ensure that the structural issues affecting competitiveness in the economy, just as the DG of NASI said, productivity and competitiveness is a very big issue. And these things are related to the structural issues around the logistics, cost of logistics, the quality of roads. And I'm happy the MD of Nigerian Railway Corporation is here. He's doing a very great work. And I'm hoping that he'll be supported with more resources so that we can see a situation where we move more of our cargo by rail. And that will reduce the pressure on the roads and so on and so forth. So we need to see more attention to structural issues. And we need to also emphasize that the subnationals also have a big role to play in this. This is not just for the federal government to do. It is for the subnationals and even the local governments to also put something on the table. So let me stop there and allow others to.
All right. In addition to the discussion in the studios, we have a number of reports which also speak to the issues. And let's see this one from Lagos.
Administration, such as the removal of fuel subsidy, the unification of the exchange rates, strengthened banking system and monetary policy by the Apex Bank, and the new tax law, among other policies of government, industry players say were key drivers of growth and macroeconomic stability in the year 2025, which had an increase in investors' confidence. Various aspects of the economy, including agriculture, health, education, among others, experienced the overall impact of the economic recovery.
Our economy grew by 4.23% in the second quarter of 2025, the strongest pace in 4 years.
And it's no secret that anyone tracking investment flows will hear that, last week, this company from America was here, this company from China. China is the usual suspect. A lot of their companies are coming in all the time. But you are now getting companies, investors coming out from mainland Europe, from Europe itself. A lot of already come from the UK.
The key indicators of growth reflect in the current figures, with the GDP rate at 3.98% in the third quarter of 2025, while the current inflation rate is at 14.45%, a significant decline from the previous rate. Oil sector production rose to 1.64 million barrels per day in the year 2025, while the non-oil sector revenue soared to about 20.59 trillion naira as August same year, signaling an over 40% growth. Sustaining this progress recorded are what experts along the value chain are projecting areas of focus in year 2026, with the expectations that the mandate of pushing for a resilient economy in the aspects of infrastructure, digital economy, entrepreneurship are actualized.
That has already put him off. So to provide the entrepreneurship environment is very, very essential to grow the economy, and not just the big entrepreneurs. In almost every thriving economy, you find that the majority of the jobs are actually created by small scale and medium scale businesses, not the big businesses. So the first question to ask is, what has the situation been for creation of small and medium scale businesses? And if you talk about infrastructure, you talk about energy infrastructure, of course, you have to have adequate power to be able to even charge your phone.
In this whole digital space, this is one way you can leverage your business. And we are trying to encourage people to learn digital skills, even for their own self-benefit in terms of rebranding their business and putting themselves out online so they can make profit for themselves.
For the first time in many years, we had end of year, Christmas, New Year, without people queuing at the filling stations to get fuel for their vehicles and generators. So these are good signs. And for Lagos State, we can say kudos to them for being very deliberate in their infrastructure upgrade effort.
With implementation of the new tax law and all other already existing positive pointers, experts believe that the nation's economy will maintain its recovery growth trajectory.
All right, from Lagos, let's go over to Maiduguri and see this report.
As Borno enters 2026, security remains central to the state's recovery agenda. This was emphasized by Governor Bagana Umar Azulum during the presentation of the 2026 budget to the State House of Assembly.
This administration will invest heavily on security in the year 2026. We shall spend our last kobo so that our people will close their eyes and see.
The governor also linked security to the state's durable solution agenda, which focuses on transitioning from short-term humanitarian assistance to long-term development.
We have adopted one very important policy of bringing smaller villages into single town because of many opportunities. We can provide security, we can provide schools in a coordinated manner.
Beyond budgetary provision, Governor Zulum has sustained frequent visits to frontline and hostile communities, engaging troops, identifying operational challenges, and providing logistics. These visits included communities in the 3 senatorial zones, reflecting the state's government's close collaboration with security agencies in the resettlement process. The Borno State government has also continued efforts to open and rehabilitate access roads, linking communities cut off by years of insecurity. These roads are expected to boost commercial activities, improve movement, and enable farmers to safely their farmlands. Security sector stakeholders say improved logistics and interagency cooperation are yielding positive results, even as vigilance remains necessary.
The use of technology, modern technology, to gather information through the open source, where we tend to get information from social media platforms, and also working more closer to members of the public, harnessing their information and processing into actionable intelligence to see that we're able to carry out our mandates.
From the citizens' perspective, many residents acknowledge improved security in resettled communities, though they call for sustained military presence, faster reconstruction, and enhanced protection of rural areas.
I grew up here. I know when the insurgency came, I know how Maiduguri was. And then I can proudly say kudos to His Excellency for his good job in making sure he secure life and property in Maiduguri, not only in Maiduguri Metropolis, but in the local government.
And he did his best, so we thank him, we thank God, we thank him. What he did is good. Let everybody go back to his destination. That's why I appreciate the leadership of Professor Babagana Omar Azulum.
Taking the action by the Borno State government is now bringing the peace and tranquility a part of some local governments, especially northern Borno.
The challenges remains how to consolidate these gains, address emerging threats, and ensuring lasting peace across the state.
All right. Back here in the studio, Dr. Kwefa, I'd like to come back to the area where you spoke on earlier. You said the mobility sector, and with particular reference to transportation. If you heard Dr. Oputa in his opening comments, he did talk about movement goods, transportation of goods, and the challenges that the small players face as a result of policies which the government has said were necessary, that the benefits were going to be reaped long term. Let's look at the area of transportation of goods, particularly, with particular reference to railway infrastructure, which is seen as the one that's capable of movement of large, haulage of goods. How did that sector perform in 2025?
Thank you very much. I will plead that you allow me to move out of just rail.
Yeah,
but talk transportation generally. But let me say it this way, that just like Dr. Mullah Yusuf alluded to, as the economy improves from stabilization to growth, what you will see will be increased productivity, power generation and distribution is also improving. What you will see is manufacturing productivity will also increase, more goods will be produced. What you will see is along the value chain, more entrepreneurs, innovations will emerge, and then there will now be the issue of supply chain management. So logistics will come to play. And what that translates to from 2023 to 2025, when we move from the first subsidy removal, introduction of CNG vehicles, utilization, electric vehicles utilization, problem of infrastructure deficits, gas is not available, that has changed. So what we hope to see in 2026 is the increase in the capacity within the transport sector. And the first one will be the capacity on the road, the capacity in terms of gas availability to power the increased usage of the CNG vehicles. And that will now take us to the big players, not necessarily the small players, now moving goods by rail. Now, in the rail sector, we have infrastructural deficit, in the sense that for too many years, we've not been able to increase significantly the kilometerage of our rail system, and also since the advent of security issues, we've had vandalization along the rail tracks. Now you can hardly travel more than 400. The longest you can travel now is about 385 kilometers along the Warri-Itakpe axis. That is also faced with its own aging infrastructure issues. So what we hope to see in the transport sector is to increase the capacity of our infrastructure. That is, and the budget, 2026 budget, seems to be speaking to that. We will see more growth along the Lagos-Calabar axis. You see more along the Lagos-Sokoto axis. A lot is happening around the Abuja to Kaduna to Kano axis, and a lot is happening on the Eastern Corridor. So what we hope to see is a completion of these linkages, because for the mobility sector, it's not just enough to develop them in silos. They have to connect. The milk producers in Kano and the northern part of Nigeria wants to get their milk to Lagos and to Oyo, Edo, where you have the population. If you produce milk in Kano or any part of the Northwest, and you can't get it to where the consuming population is, it's just going to rot off. The effort being made in Nigeria to increase capacity for food production will not be fully achieved if it cannot get on the narrow gauge line that can take the product from Minna to Kaduna, Kano, or Minna to Lagos, and also for exports. We want to see improved connection of the rail lines to the ports, which is also part of the National Rail Developmental Plan. So what you will see in 2026 is we will deepen the connectivity of the rail system, deepen the intermodality of the transport system by encouraging state government to connect the roads to available rail lines and rail stops. We want to see more of that.
Well, I'm glad you spoke about the connecting the ports with the rail system, because there are cases in point, even as we speak, where it would seem that over the years, there had been broken promises, and we always say that government is a continuum, and this is not speaking about the current administration, but past administrations which had enunciated policies which were meant to do this, and over time. A case in point, for instance, is the Barrow Port, where, you know, a lot has been said about it, and to all intents and purposes, that port still remains comatose today.
Okay, let me start from connecting the ports, and then I will zero down Barrow. You're perfectly correct. Barrow Port has been completed. What is missing in the issue of Barrow Port is the road connecting to the port and the rail system connecting to the port. And I can tell you that it's already part of the National Rail System plan. And the National Assembly is involved, Ministry of Blue Economy and Marine, and the Ministry of Transportation. So there is now, the rail system has been awarded. The issue is funding. The road system has been awarded. The issue is funding. And I know that this government, the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the National Assembly has taken Barrow as a major project. That's one. And beyond Barrow Port, there is also the plan to now link all the existing rail system to the port. So Lagos is already linked. The Lagos-Ibadan, which is part of the Lagos-Kano, and the Lakadi route is already linked to the port. So the plan is now to take it to Tinkan Port. That is from Apapa Port, the Lagos Port, to Tinkan Port. Then on the central line, where you have the Warri-Itakpe, the plan is to take it from Warri to the Warri Port. And on the Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, which is now at Aba, is to extend from Port Harcourt to Onne Port. And these are plans that are consciously ready for implementation, and the 2026 budget, I'm aware, structurally address that. So what we see in 2026 is conscious effort by government to get all the rail lines linked to the port, and the developmental commissions now start developing the inner regions and the states. I'm aware Kaduna State is at the high point of the Kaduna Metro, same for Kano, and I'm also aware that by tomorrow, for example, our guys in Zamfara will be speaking with the Zamfara state government to resuscitate some of the old lines, just like Plateau State resuscitated just to Bukuru. Zamfara State is working on some. Borno State is working on another line. Then the Kaduna State government is also working on some other line. So we are beginning to see a resurgence of interest by state government. But more importantly, is that the existing one, optimizing what we have, is for this it's not been commissioned, it's been completed. The Ogun State government has now completed the road that links the Wole Soyinka station to the main town. So we want to see more of this construction of roads around the region so that you can create business hubs around the train system. If you improve the rail sector, by and large the transportation sector, you bring down the cost of goods, inflation comes down. Then increase the productivity. So goods that are produced can move. And when the goods can move, the supply chain system, you create multiple businesses out of a single product. What you see is you increase jobs. There will be increase in the number of jobs that is possible. Then when you do that, you reduce multidimensional poverty. So what we expect to see in 2026, going from stabilization, is to now move into the growth phase, where real physical, practical connectivity of the integrated multimodal system of moving goods to reduce the cost of logistics. Once you reduce the cost of logistics, you increase ease of doing business. Then when you increase the ease of doing business, you see more people. Another thing we have also noticed is investors are now getting more interested in the rail sector. In the last 2 weeks, I've had meetings with people say, what can we do? What can we fund? We want to fund rail. These are areas people don't want to go for. They are gradually seeing the prospect, like Dr. Muda Yusuf mentioned. So these are the expectations of 2026. And we believe that those of us in that sector, working well with the two professional bodies, we won't let this country down.
All right, let's go to our Lagos studio. And Dr. Puta, this is straightforward. If I were a small player and as a member of NACI, and as you mentioned, I struggled in 2025 to keep head above water, what are the things I should be looking out for in 2026 so that I do not just keep head above water, that I'm actually floating?
When I listen to government officials and government agencies talking, I wonder whether they understand that we are sprinting towards a 300 million people economy or country, nation. So a 300 million people nation, the kind of railways and the waterways and state government investments, they can't cut it. These cannot cut it. The development we need and we have to see in our country will only happen with the private sector. Okay, government hasn't got the income or capacity on its own to start to develop the kind of infrastructure that's required to put Nigeria where it has to be. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, concerning the small guy and the little guy and the business community, and what the big elephant in the room, which no one is talking about, is, let me just break it down into two very simple things. That's the major elephant in the room, which goes beyond the tax, goes beyond the railways, goes beyond everything. The main thing in the room, which will bring our economy forward, is inclusion. And I'll say it very simply. In our country today, 90 to 95% of the small players have no access to affordable funding. The CBN and other agencies are fully aware that the Nigerian state, as it is today, officially turns a blind eye to what is called loan sharking around the world. Essentially loan sharking, because Mr. Muda was saying 30 to 35%. The small business player borrows money at triple-digit interest rate today in Nigeria, not double-digit interest rate. The interest rate for the little guy to get funding for his business is triple-digit interest. Now, the whole world now is awash with capital. Don't be worried, don't be fooled about that. The entire planet is awash with capital. And this capital is searching for where to go. So it's not like we have to beg for people to come. The capital is there. But what they found in Nigeria is the only country across Africa where you can do armchair capitalism. People don't have to bring in money to invest in projects. They simply bring in money and dump the money, and they can get, it's advertised today in Nigeria by many, many financial institutions that they will give you 20% interest as on your money. So in countries where they have access to capital 1%, 2%, 5%, across the West African corridor, in Cotonou, in Benin, in Togo, in Ivory Coast, it's 5% per annum for everybody, not for big men's children or for connected people. And then across the international communities, in Japan it's 0%, in China it's 0%, in most countries 0 to 3%. So this capital is looking for it to go. They bring it to Nigeria, and companies are advertising on the streets that they will give you 20% interest on capital deposited. If you can get 20% on capital deposited, why on earth, how are you encouraging people to open business? Where the ROI could be how long? No, people are not investing. Investors that we're getting excited about, they're not really investors. These are sharks. How many are investing in business that create jobs? Nobody. These are just people dumping their money and getting high interest rates. And the whole Calvary, everyone's here about Nigeria. that you can bring your money to Nigeria and get a 20% return on your money without working, without investing, without risk. Even local investors, people locally, don't want to put their money in business because what's the point in opening a business and earning maybe over 3 years, you invest, you hire people, you lose money here, you deal with all the issues in our states. People are not investing in business, in enterprise. Instead, they're saving money to get high returns. And the CBN, I'm not an economist, but I know enough about the economy to know that any country, if the countries in the world who are advising us, none of them in their own countries allow interest rates above 4 to 5% for everybody. But in our country, our CBN is raising rates to 30, 35% to borrow officially, and the poor cannot get that money. Ever since the military regime, the biggest borrowers in our economy are the state governments, and they pay back from the federal allocations. The major borrowers are the state governments, so it's a government-based arrangement. The poor, the struggling business people don't have access to that money. Even at 30, 35%, they don't have access. Everybody, when you look online, look at all these apps and all these phone things, check the rate. The microfinance banks that the poor are supposed to be the saving grace for the poor, where government is supposed to channel funds into, the microfinance banks are not being funded. They're getting money from these sources. They're giving out money at some cases 10% per month, officially documented. And CBN is supervising these banks. So 120% per year. If you're borrowing money at 120% per year, and the guy in Togo is borrowing at 5% a year, and then you're holding inventory, because most of our business people, especially the small business people, are semi-illiterate. So they take on stock without realizing that the stock, the goods they have for processing, if you're borrowing money at 120%, every month your goods are devalued, the stock you have is costing you 10% per month. So how do you compete in the West African coast? How do you compete with people importing goods from China? How do you compete? So the real economy is suffering, even though you see, you hear GDP growth 4-point-something%. This is not real. It's only people bringing in money, and this is not new. Every time they do it, you watch out for this 2026. It's a cycle. Anyone who is smart enough will check the cycle. Every election year, these foreign investors, because they have no real interest in our economy, just before elections, every 4 years, they pull out their money. They keep their money in our stock exchange, keep their money in our banks, get our 20%, 25% interest rate, which they can't get in their countries. Elections come, they pull it out. And then we now start asking, what happened? It happened in the year where everyone was celebrating Nigeria, that, when the global meltdown happened, the Nigerian economy did not melt down, that we had some great geniuses. No. The real economy is not known to if you look at the statistics, the real economy is not even known to government. The MSME economy in Nigeria is not known to government. Because, take it for example, this very minute, Nigerian farmers are feeding the entire West African continent. And they're feeding that continent and earning their money in dollars. So Forex is being traded across the hinterland, and that's what causes the kind of inflation you see in the hinterland. But that money is not captured by CBN. So the government does not know how much foreign exchange is coming into Nigeria. When they talk of export, I don't know why on earth. We are a country that has landlocked nations across our borders. But whenever they talk about export, they say how many things left the Nigerian port. The port is not important for export in Nigeria. The port is the smallest export. The main export is across our land borders. That's the main export. You don't call export only when goods go to America. Goods go across the borders every single minute. The gold, the lithium, all these things, they go across these borders. Presently, right now, because of the situation with the dollar and the BRICS nations, most of the countries in the BRICS nations have decided to go back to the gold standard. In the past 4 years, China has realized $300 billion in their gold reserve. Russia has another $150 billion in their gold reserve over the past 3 to 4 years. But they don't have gold. Where is the gold coming from? Where is the gold? It's coming from Africa. And Nigeria is supplying most of this gold. All the firms were buying. The explosion in the EV market in the world. Where are the statistics of how much lithium, cadmium, tantalite, all these metals that are being sold on the global market? How do Chinese firms sell sell less than other countries? How are they getting these materials? How are these things happening? And this is happening in our economy. We're talking, see, Nigeria knows it. We have to be able to bail the cat. Our economy is already sprinting towards what it should be, $1 trillion economy. But we're blindfolded to the real things that are happening in the hinterland. The borders are porous and things are moving in the billions of dollars every day. The MSMEs are the ones right in the face of it. Talk to us, meet with the MSMEs, understand the economy. And then when you understand the economy, all this talk about, see, the MSME doesn't care about the budget. What does the budget do for MSMEs? The big players care about budget. The MSME guy does not care about the Nigerian budget. It's not important to him or her. The CBN has to get into this matter. We cannot have MSMEs having to beg, borrow, and steal to get 35% interest rates. It's ridiculous. I can talk about this all day long. That's the main elephant in the room. The cost of money in the economy to the real players is scandalous. If you bring these guys into the economy, bring the MSMEs into the economy, you won't have to talk about borrowing money. You won't have to talk about looking for foreign investors. Nigeria is on fire. We can take over the world. We are the greatest economy in the world, but we're just blindfolded to the real things.
You've made. And let me put Dr. Muda Yusuf on notice, because I'm wanting you to respond to some of those serious statements that Dr. Oputa has made, but not before we take this short break. And stay with us. We'll be right back.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Ordinarily, this segment would start with a number of reports, but let me just quickly say this. This is when we open the phone lines and you can get to contribute to the ongoing discussion. The numbers to call will be on your screens. You can call in. We advise that you keep those comments and questions as briefly as possible so that others can also get on the line. And we also encourage you not to spend too much time greeting, just a simple hello. And then we also advise that the best way to know that your call has been passed through is you'd see your name appear on screen. Once that happens, it means you can go straight on and either ask your question or make a comment. We also do have a number of reports, but because Dr. Oputa has made some very serious statements before we went on break, and I'd like to keep it hot at that moment, we'll go straight to Dr. Muda Yusuf and ask him to respond before we come back and take one or two of those reports. So, Dr. Muda Yusuf, it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the point made by Dr. Oputa is to a large extent very correct, because he is hands-on and, of course, he gets feedback from his members. But I like to say that, in economic management, sometimes objectives can be conflicting. The Central Bank of Nigeria has the primary responsibility of price stability. And the instruments it has to deal with that are the monetary policy instruments. All this MPR, CRR, liquidity ratio, asymmetric corridor, and those things in an attempt to tame inflation, in an attempt to stabilize the exchange rates, those things inevitably lead to high interest rates. So these are some of the challenges in economic management. In trying to solve one problem, you create some other problems, But the good news is that now that we have seen some remarkable deceleration in interest rates, I'm expecting that in 2026, we should see a moderation in interest rates. Now that we have seen a deceleration in inflation, I expect that in 2026, the CBN should begin to ease the monetary policy situation. It has started some marginal easing, but not significant enough to have the kind of impact that Dr. Oputa was talking about. The second point I'd like to make with respect to that is that in 2026, we need to see more robust development finance interventions. I know that the current CBN governor is averse to all these intervention funds and so on and so forth. But we cannot afford to throw away the baby with the bathwater. I know that under the previous CBN dispensation, there was a lot of abuse of these intervention funds, either to SMEs or to anchor borrowers, to farmers, all sorts of funds were flying all over the place. And there was a lot of abuse. And there was a lot of defaults. Well, going forward, I think the CBN can do a lot more in terms of supporting the development finance institutions, because their own role is to ensure that we fix this challenge of funding. We give long-term funds and we give it as single digit. That is what the development finance have. So I'm talking now about the Bank of Agriculture, the Bank of Industry, and the Development Bank of Nigeria. And I'm also aware that even within the SME space, there are some funding that have been made available. I don't know how effective those funds have been deployed. But we need to do a lot more with respect to development finance, intervention. Because for the real sector of the economy, whether you are talking about agriculture, you are talking about manufacturing, we are talking about even infrastructure, because he talked about the private sector coming to fund infrastructure. You can also not fund infrastructure at an interest rate of even over 20%, not to talk of 30%, because you are talking of long-term projects, which is highly capital intensive. So there has to be deliberate policy of deliberate financing framework for strategic sectors of the economy outside the mainstream of the commercial banks. I think that point is is something that we should note. Then the issue of trade. Yes, a lot of informal trade takes place across the border. There is no doubt about that. When you see some pressure, especially on agricultural commodities, because of the economic reform that took place, most of the countries around us, they use CFA. The CFA has gained significant strength over the Naira. So our products have become cheaper relative to neighboring countries, whether you're talking of Benin, Niger, Mali, all of them. Most of them, all these Francophone countries, they spend CFA. And the CFA has become much stronger, almost 200% stronger than the Naira. So that has created an incentive for a lot of these countries to come to Nigeria to buy things. In a way, it has also improved the economy because a lot of export is taking place, not only of agricultural products, even of manufactured goods. That is why if you look at the data, the current reform has impacted positively on non-oil exports. Even this reserve that we are talking about, most of it is not even coming from oil. It's coming from the fact that because of the liberalization of the exchange rate and the stability in the currency and the level of investors' confidence, a lot of foreign exchange inflows are coming, even outside the central bank. So these are some of the benefits of the reform that is taking place. So I take the point that he made. We need to do a lot more to support, the real sector in terms of in terms of funding, because quite frankly, it's not easy for anybody. Either you are a small business, you are a big business. As long as you are in manufacturing, you are in real estate, you are in agriculture and all of that, you cannot fund that business at the current interest. It's extremely very high. So I'm hoping that in 2026, because inflation is dropping, we expect that the central bank will also ease the monetary tightening position so that we have a much lower interest rate. Because as we said, we are going to a growth phase, and growth requires investment. Right. Investment requires funding, and the funding has to be something that can be sustainable, not something that is short-term and also very, very, very expensive. So that would be my response to what Dr. Oputa said.
All right, thank you very much. This one, we'll take another in our reports. This one is from Enugu.
Successive governments in Nigeria since independence to the present administration have formulated various policies and programs on trade and investment. These include the launch of Nigeria's first policy, which aimed at prioritizing local goods and services in local procurement, import bans, high tariffs, structural adjustment program (SAP), and renewed hope reforms. Although Nigeria's trade policies are characterized by a blend of protective measures and incentives, but they revolve around provision of conducive environment, reducing multiple taxation, local content laws, ban on importation of raw materials, provision of education and training, provision of infrastructural development, provision of loan facilities to SMEs, as well as equipping the health sector. Key players say government policies on trade and investment will impact positively on the growth of indigenous economy if well implemented, as it will create employment opportunities, reduce insecurity, drive local competitiveness and productivity, as well as reduce inflation and medical tourism.
Younger people, the massive workforce that Nigeria has generated but not giving them job, will become entrepreneurial, and those of them who are really very enterprising can now begin to think about manufacturing and doing things that will help them to create wealth and create a situation where they don't have to be dependent on anyone. And one thing the government can also do to improve this is electricity supply.
But right now, we are having non-oil contribution growing higher and higher. And even the tax reform is intended to aid in that initiative by reducing the burden of tax on small-scale businesses and then low-income earners, and even bringing more people into the tax net. All these things will help to boost the economy.
Let's take agriculture, for instance. The smart farms that is building across the smart green schools is one, so that our people can learn that you don't just have food on the table. The children will be able to know that there's a process through which you can get food on the table. So that's why you have the smart farms. Then you have the farm estates. 200 hectares of land per electoral ward in Enugu State, so that our people can now migrate from primitive farming to mechanized agriculture.
We can now see that the inflation is going down and all those things that because earlier now, what I'm wearing is local apparel as of now. These are indigenous. So we are no more having that kind of appetite for foreign products because of the local content.
They appealed to the government to provide a level playing ground for local investors and ensure accessibility to social amenities.
All right, let's have another one of those reports, this time from Asaba.
Nigeria's new tax regime marking a major shift in how taxes are administered and collected across the country. Central to the reform is the consolidation and simplification of tax laws alongside the rollout of a more technology-driven tax administration system. Government officials say the new framework is designed to widen the tax base, reduce leakages, and improve compliance,
while easing the burden on low-income earners and encouraging voluntary tax payment.
For an economy of about, I think, $285 billion, we need to be able to generate substantial non-oil revenues to support, the ecosystem. For now, I think when this government took over, our revenue to GDP ratio was about 6%. In the last 30 months, I think that has risen to between 10 and 13%. But the threshold really is for most of these advanced countries that we like talking about is about 30%.
With Nigeria historically reliant on oil revenues, recent policies have focused on repositioning the sector to support broader economic stability rather than act as the sole revenue backbone.
Before, the things that they were not getting, they will get. And it will also line these multiple taxes that they are getting. So people will now know what to get and what not to get, and what to expect and what not to expect.
However, reactions from citizens remain mixed. Some Nigerians welcome the reforms, saying a more efficient tax system and better managed oil revenues could finally improve public service delivery.
After any hard-earned money from business, and at the end of the day, government taxes. So, in my own opinion, it's not going to be good for the citizen, even though it's going to be good for the country, which is a federal government. They're going to earn more.
The new tax regime and oil and gas reforms represent a bold attempt to reset the nation's fiscal direction. Whether these policies will truly deliver better governance and tangible benefits for citizens will depend on how well they are implemented and how quickly Nigerians begin to feel the impact.
All right, just as you heard in that report, the reforms are across board, but again, there is the matter of how they will be implemented and even how the citizens would key into these reforms for it to be beneficial. And they're cross-board. There's also the issue of reforms in oil and gas, and the latest one, which is the rave of all discussions now, is the tax reforms. In spite of all the efforts to explain what it's all about, it would perhaps take some time for many citizens to get to understand it. But when you take the reforms, all of them, they're meant to address all the huge challenges the country has been facing. Now, do you see them? Do you see the political will in implementing these reforms? Because Nigeria has had all kinds of plans and reforms in the past. What is different? What should be different in 2026?
Let me start by saying that from time immemorial, tax system had existed. Even the Bible says, give unto Caesar that is Caesar, and to go that is God. Caesar in this case is the government. All over the world, including the communist, socialist, not just the capitalist system. Tax is a form of citizens' contribution to development. And there is a general understanding. Tax is proportional to what you make. So for those who make so much, they pay so large. For those who make so little, sometimes they don't even get taxed. So for any nation that looks at development, tax is inevitable. Now, what are we going through now? We've had situations where in our system, some people don't even pay tax and they make so much money. So they are indirectly cheating on all others. When shortly after independence, or just before independence, around that period, you see a situation where tax collection is a major issue. You don't get your child into the school systems without showing some evidence of paying tax. So what we should be concerned is, what does the reform hope to achieve? The reform in this case, to my own understanding, and as explained, is to ensure that people don't pay taxes more than what they should pay. People don't get into multiple taxation, especially the small, medium businesses who are mostly affected by taxes coming from all tiers of government, and including non-state actors. So what we need is more explanation. It has, but definitely we need a reform. A system where some people make so much and pay so little or none. I was at a program, I think it was the early days of the Governor Sanwo-Olu administration in Lagos State, where one of the contributory tax experts says taxing a small percent of the elites in Lagos could well produce exactly what the state needs. So I don't think this reform is targeting the common people. It's targeting those who eat at home, has not been paying tax, or have been taking advantage of loopholes in the tax system. And also at the same time, making sure that the more vulnerable people don't have to pay more than they could afford. And also at the same time, making sure that there is enough resources for the government, in this case CISA, to use in this infrastructure development. How do you want a nation to prosper when you don't have the adequate power generation? You don't have the road system, you don't have the rail system, you don't have the hospitals, you don't have the schools, you don't have the educational sector blooming. And it has to come from one form of contribution from citizens. So I think it's just because it happened. It has always been happening. But because it's happening on a bigger scale, but from what they have explained to us, a lot of people will have more money in their pockets. We are those who make so much and we are not contributing. We have to release some of those over there. In America today, at every election season, tax reform is a major issue. Same thing in UK right now. They are discussing who should pay, what should pay, how it should be paid. So we are not going to be excused from the issue of tax. By the next 4 years again, there will be another reform. Tax reform is inevitable. It has been there from day one. Give unto Caesar, that is Caesar, and give to God, that is God. How this is done, how it is implemented, what laws governs it, and the transparency with which it is done, and then what government does with what comes after this payment are what is critical, in my own view.
Right. Now that you speak of power driving industrialization and a growing economy, let me go back to our Lagos studio and engage Dr. Oputa. You talked about the cost of money being the big elephant in the room. You said that's one big elephant in the room. And perhaps, especially for the matter of industrialization, the other big issue is power. Now, 2025, how would you assess that? Now, I know that there have been reforms in the power sector, but I want you to take a look at it as part of NACI. In the 36 states and the FCT, how well have they keyed in? How many states have keyed into the reforms, particularly in the power sector? And how did that perform? And what are you looking at for the industrialists? What would be his projection and what would he be saying about the power sector in 2026?
We've spoken at all levels of government about the need to stop wasting our time as a country looking for money or loans to do what people are ready to do for free. The government, I happen to have been a contractor in business in the 90s where the government of the day was planning to invest billions of dollars in Nitel to create GSM. I was there. And then that president died. Democracy came in, And GSM was created without without 1 penny of government money. People brought in money. People are ready to bring in money to provide potable water in Nigeria. Nation states are ready to bring in money to give power. People would be excited to give power to the entire Southwest, for example, where there's a 25 million population ready to pay for power. In Port Harcourt, people will be excited to bring in power. Not $1 should be charged. They won't even ask for a penny. They'll bring in the generation, they'll bring in the transition, they'll bring in proper systems. Nigeria will not spend 1 penny. But I don't know why, for the decades on end, we insist on looking for money to pay for what people are ready to fund. Rail system, people are ready to create the rail systems. International, I'm not talking about local investors. But you now make it so easy for them to bring money and get it for free. Get the money they would have gotten without having to spend. This is the challenge. Okay? So power is one of the backbones of our economy. One of them. A very important backbone. But it's not being taken that seriously. And I don't see why another thing is happening. All over the place, people are talking of green energy. People are talking of individuals looking for solar panels and all these things. And for some strange reason, the same foreigners who can't give credit to Nigerians cheap are giving solar panels, inverters on credit. They're bringing in these things in the billions and giving people 5-year loans to buy infrastructure, which is solar infrastructure. But these things can be created. We cannot have you can't have a city relying on every individual having his own solar panel. What is that? That is abdication of what the state should be doing. The state is not supposed to spend its money, but create the enabling environment and the approvals required to let large players provide municipal power. It is possible, it's easy. This very president, I was old enough to remember, they brought in a barge, AES barge in Lagos when there was a power problem and gave Lagos power from the barge. Those days, Lagos can get power, the whole Southwest can get power, the whole Nigeria can get industrial power, not this solar panel, Chinese jamboree that's happening now. Proper power. No country can grow industrially through having everybody buying solar panels. That's not how we're going to grow our country. We bring in people to provide power, industrial power. We have the resources. We have coal. Our coal is there wasting. We have gas being flared till today. We have the gas. We have hydro. We have, this is technology. I'm a chemical engineer. I'm not a doctor, sorry. I'm an engineer. We know what to do. Nigerian engineers, Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, we know what to do. And the foreigners are ready to bring the money to do it. Why are we dulling? Why are we wasting our time trying to borrow money to do things that people are ready to pay for? Why? You wanted to borrow money to do GSM. The government, this democratic government showed that people will bring in their money to set up GSM. And they've done it successfully for 20-something years. So why are we trying to invent the wheel? I beg. Back to what my friend Dr. Muda said. I want to quickly just touch that before I go. Nigeria fought a civil war. During the civil war, the interest rate in Nigeria was 6%. 6%. 1976, the interest rate was 6% in Nigeria. And anybody, you didn't have to have a brother or uncle in government. Everyone could borrow at 6% in this Nigeria. The federal government nationalized the banks. First Bank, Union Bank, UBA were nationalized. After they nationalized the banks, the same government became the biggest borrower from the banks. As the state governments became the biggest borrowers, they were ready to borrow money at any rate. Because at the time, I can tell you for free, and anybody who wants to be honest will tell you, banks were hobnobbing with public sector officials at the time. And they were offering public sector officials incentives to borrow money. So because the public sector people get monthly allocations, they sign away for multiple years to debit from source, from the state money. So banks were too happy to lend the entire portfolio to the public sector and starve the real sector. And because the public sector was getting that money, the CBN at that time now agreed to increase the interest rates. So any nonsense that we hear in Nigeria today about it not being possible is because everybody has become so used to a system where it costs 30% to borrow. So they believe it's not possible to go back. Since the president could go and do what no one has done, he went ahead to cancel this nonsense of subsidy. He canceled it. This same president has the balls. He has the balls to do it. But maybe they're not telling him the truth. Look back, 6% in 1976, post-war, in this country. And now state governments are the biggest borrowers. SMEs are borrowing money at 120% minimum. We cannot compete. No MSME can compete. Those who are claiming to compete are getting funds from somewhere else. But any serious MSME that's competing with companies across the West African corridor is lying to you. We cannot compete with anybody if my stock, holding stock, costs me 120%. So if I don't sell my stock in 6 months, I pay 60%. Apart from that, even those that can borrow, should they want to borrow, the small players will drop their vehicle with a borrower under the same CBN's regulations. The CBN has a law, Nigeria has a law which says that movable assets should be collateral in banks. No Nigerian bank takes movable assets today, even though it's a law. I put it to the CBN governor today to show me a bank in Nigeria that's compelled to take movable assets. MSMEs, microfinance banks take it and they seize the asset. So how can a business person who is using a grinding machine to make his money give the machine to the bank to hold? How does he make money? In this same economy.
All right.
And nobody in CBN, I challenge them to tell us how many MSMEs in Nigeria are getting this money. And the banks are declaring 1 trillion naira profit. How can a bank declare 1 trillion profit in an economy where no MSME is getting money? Where are they getting the money from? Who is getting them the 1 trillion? Right. And no one is asking questions. No one is asking questions. All of us, see, we own this country together. The banks cannot be doing this nonsense. The CBN governor, I hope you're looking at this. I'm ready to see you tomorrow. You cannot sit down as CBN governor and explain to Nigeria that we should have 35% interest rate. When Cotonou here has 5%, and Cotonou here is bringing all the goods coming to Nigeria are coming from Cotonou border. The economy is growing. We're killing our economy. You're killing the small guy. The big players that open refineries don't borrow in Nigeria. They borrow internationally. Right. We borrow locally, and we're charged 120% in our economy. It has to stop.
Okay. Well,
it's nonsense.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, it seems the matter of the cost of money won't go away. Let's go to Dr. Muda Yusuf now. It seems the matter of the cost of money won't go away. However, we started off this last bit of it by talking about what we would like to see in terms of the development of the power sector and how that can impact manufacturing and industrialization. So that's what we're putting across to Dr. Muda Yusuf. A quick assessment. Oh, there. We don't have him anymore on. Okay. I will see if we can reestablish links with him. But again, these are the things that many small industrialists would like to see. Is Dr. Muda Yusuf back now? Oh, we are not sure. All right. Dr. Okwefa, how would you respond to that?
I feel the point Engineer Oputa has been trying to make. For the small, medium enterprises, the cost of funds is a big issue. Not only the cost, access to funds. And like Dr. Muda Yusuf alluded to, the central bank has to look into that issue. There are so many opportunities that are possible. And I believe the people who manage the economy are also listening. And I don't think they are ignorant of these facts. But like Dr. Muda said, when you try to solve one problem, others may spring up. However, regardless, my own sector is also a victim of that. You can't, the reason why you don't see a lot of people, private sector, invest in the transportation sector has to do with cost of funds. And I hope engineer Oputa understands that too. Where the return on investment is around 13 to 20%, and the cost of funds is above 25%, investors will not take their funds there. That's a major issue within the transport sector.
Okay, so that even
and that's why, in the capitalist system, I think we need to put things in proper perspective. It's countries like America, UK, Germany, and the rest. We see the government playing a big role there. So when we keep saying government has no business in business, it is a wrong part. People need to watch those kind of issues. Even the most capitalist of all, the American system. You see the transport sector, especially when it has to do the one that the common people uses. The government puts a lot of interest in it. The public transport system in many cities in America is the city government propelling it. You don't even see the private sector there because the return on investment is not that much. When you go to the rail system too, it is the city government and the state governments that gets it. When it comes to intercity, interstate movement, you see that it is the national government. The reason is because the return on investment in this sector is not encouraging compared to even where they borrow money at about 5, 6, 3, 2%. You still see the private sector shying away from it. But when it comes to speed rail, where you are now free to charge, no regulation limiting what you charge, you see the private sector will show you. And that's why you see them more in the aviation. That's why you see them more in maritime. But when it comes to the public sector, public transport sector, you don't easily see the private sector because of the return on investment. Nobody wants to bring in money into a sector and not be able to recoup his money. And that is protectionism. The government must protect the common people who are willing to pay, but don't have the ability to pay. And that is why when you see concession programs failing in this part of the world, because the economy of the people, the living standard of the people also matters. So you don't expect government to just stay off. And I keep saying this with due respect. You need the private sector in the transport sector to make it work. And I can relate to sometimes around 2012 to 2015 when the price of fuel went up and the infrastructure bank made loans available to people in the transport sector at near 0%. Maximum it gets to 4% when you put the cost of management of the fund. A lot of people move into the mass transit system because the return on investment at that time was around 13%, while the cost of funds was around 22%. So that is what Dr. Muda Yusuf was alluding to, which the previous administration, the previous administration did a lot, but it was abuse. So we need to get back to some of those things and make sure it works for the people it's meant to work for. The Bank of Industry, the Bank of Agric, all those banks that have these developmental loans should come up. Go and see the people who are running the informal sector in the transport sector. It's not going to solve any problem. It's just creating more. We just saw tricycles, Koropes and the rest. That's not transportation. Those are called paratransit. They are not mass. Okada, Marwa, or Keke Napep, all those things. Because the entry level is easy. With few, you also need to know how much these guys get the loan to buy those Koropes. They pay back, they call it, I don't want to use the language yet. When they can't afford to pay, they seize the equipment from them, like you mentioned. So you always have all over the world, there are sectors the government must show interest, conscientious interest, to make sure everybody has a level playing ground.
You say these firms will do very little to improve public transportation. But let me bring this to you. We got to this stage because it was actually the politicians who introduced these forms as part of what they called empowerment.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. The tricycle, motorcycle came after, I don't know whether it's the Iraq war or whatever war, where the military were being given motorcycles. They don't. Then the keke NAPEP. NAPEP means National Agency for Poverty Eradication. It wasn't it was a genuine program. Yes. To create a cushion effect.
Which was taken away by politicians.
Yeah.
And then you found a lot of them saying, oh, I'm going to empower my people, and they go and produce 100 tricycles.
Let me put it in concept. I'm not saying that empowering people is wrong. What I'm saying is that when it becomes the norm, you want to improve your transport system. The cost of entry is what makes that area very good. And because the return on investment in that business is very small. I'm into it. It's very small. So you have to look for equipments that are cheap. The person that will bring his resources, and when you have those vehicles on the road, I mean, in cities like Lagos, Abuja, and the rest, the mass transit will not survive.
Right. So
will not survive because he picks 3-4 people. The man is on the queue waiting to pick 20-30 people. And the cost of entry is cheap. So you will see the private sector there. So government will have to come in.
Right.
It is when government now creates a proper transport system that the private sector will feel comfortable, that my investment will be protected. And the interest rate in those sectors, like he keeps alluding to, cannot be more than a certain percentage. However, he's making a point that almost all businesses, yes, it is true, but where you have 35, 20, 30%, people will run away. And that's why the thing became strictly informal. There are businesses also that governments must show serious interest. One of them is public transport. Because when the cost of public transport is low, many people will have accessibility. And when you have accessibility, what it creates for you is that you can move freely, you can do your business freely, then you can have affordability. I'm not an economist, I won't pretend to be an economist. But if it's the economic of moving people, economics of logistics, I can tell you I understand it.
All right. Okay, I believe we have Dr. Muda Yusuf back on the line. And if we do, I'll just go back to what I was saying before we lost the line to him. And that had to do with the cost of money being a recurring decimal in this conversation. That's on one side. And a question I had raised earlier on to do with power and what businesses and individuals would like to see in 2026 with regard to development of the power sector. And the worry or the question about very few subnationals having keyed into the power sector reforms, even for some subnationals that would seem to have all the resources to invest in power.
Well, for some sectors, particularly in a developing economy, the government will have to do some heavy lifting, even to encourage the private sector to come in. There is what we call social pricing in some sectors, in some areas. Because when we talk about subsidy, it's not all subsidy that is bad. You cannot run away from subsidy, for instance, in education. Otherwise, you'll be leaving too many people behind who cannot afford to put their children in private schools. We cannot run away from subsidy in health. Otherwise, you'll be leaving too many people behind who cannot go to private hospitals, which is private sector driven. The same thing in transportation. In many other climes, mass transit is supported by government. You have to put either some soft loan, there has to be some support. So we need to define the limits of what the private sector can do and what the government needs to do, especially in an economy that is just developing. The private sector is after profit. By the time you leave some things to the private sector, the price that you pay, the citizens will start to scream. So there's a political economy issue here. Now look at the power sector. People have been crying about tariffs. And one of the main arguments of those investors in the power sector is that we don't have a cost-reflective tariff. Just a month or so ago, the government was talking about writing off or raising money to be able to pay outstanding debt to the gencos and to the gas suppliers of about 5 trillion naira. That was even as at June or something last year. Those debts have begun to accumulate even now. 5 trillion naira debt. If you leave them to charge that to the private sector, how many people will be able to pay for that power? That is the dilemma that the government is faced with. So, the government has a role to play in the provision of... You see, not all infrastructure that are easier to provide for the private sector. When it comes to things like the rail system, I mean, go abroad, you will see all these things, they are supported by government. So the principle of government supporting some key infrastructure, at this level of our development, we cannot completely run away from it. Now, talking about, I think I've discussed the issue about this financing. Financing, the cost of financing is also a reflection of the macroeconomic environment. If you don't manage the macroeconomic environment well, and you have inflation running at the rate at which it's running, interest rates will be high because you overheat the economy with all sorts of money supply, printing of money and all of that. These are the macroeconomic fundamentals that have been driving interest rates. So when you're able to calm the economy and stabilize those fundamentals, you cannot begin to talk about reducing interest rates. It is the market forces that is at play. When you have too much liquidity in the system coming from all sorts of places, it affects the cost of fund. So it is inflation related. That is why I was saying that now that we're able to moderate inflation, we expect a moderation in interest rate, but that is not enough. Again, talking about government intervention in the economy. You cannot leave the economy entirely to the private sector or to market forces. That is why in economics we talk about market failure. Market failure is when areas in which the private sector cannot effectively deliver, the public sector has to go there to deliver it. It is market failure that calls for government intervention in an economy. I mean, look at what the state is doing. Even all these Chinese and things we talk about, they come here with all sorts of funds and they are supported by their governments. Mm-hmm. So we cannot go full blast into a complete market economy at this stage of our development. I'm talking about industrialization. I think we need to have a deliberate policy to support domestic industries. Our industries, if we liberalize the trade too much, our industries will collapse. They cannot survive. They cannot compete with products that are coming from these other countries. So that is why this policy of Nigerian First, of this administration, we should take it more seriously. Any sector in which we have some substantial capacity, there has to be fiscal policy protection for those industries. Just as you are having with the refineries. You can have a situation where you have a refinery of that size, and yet you have people bringing in fuel. There is no VAT, there is no import duty, nothing. How do you want this refinery to survive? And yet you want industrialization. So as a matter of deliberate policy, we should have some measure of protectionism for our industries, bearing in mind that they are operating in a very difficult environment. Dr. Okupa just talked about cost of fund. There's the cost of logistics. There's the cost of energy. There's the cost of some things you go through in the port and all of that. There are all manner of costs that you incur. If you want people to still remain in production, they have to be supported one way or the other through a combination of policy. So going to 2026, we have to be very deliberate in protecting our own domestic industries. If an economy as big as the United States economy is talking about protectionism, talk less of a small economy like ours that is just trying to grow its industrial base. So that protectionism is extremely important. And in order to also deal with the issue of social stability, issue of welfare has been a recurring issue across since the beginning of this reform. That the reform is taking a toll on the welfare of the people. This is a social issue. It's not an economic issue. But you need social stability for you to have economic stability, for you to have political stability. So there has to be deliberate efforts to ensure that we deal with the issue of the cost of food, the cost of transportation, the cost of education, the cost of health. All of these things require some measure of government intervention to support the private sector and to also possibly even the government directly getting involved in some of those things. So that is, for me, will be the way to go. It may be, it's more of an ideological issue, but you should understand the context in which we are operating. You should understand the level of development in which we are, and know that the market alone, private sector alone, cannot deliver everything.
Well,
you need to define the limits to market.
All right. So as we wind down, Dr. Muda Yusuf, just before you go, I know you don't have a crystal ball in front of you there, but then I'd say, when you look at all these, do you envisage a better Nigeria in 2026 than in 2025?
No, I do. I envisage a better Nigeria. Given what we have achieved in 2025, if we don't roll back this reform, if the government is also very sensitive to all the social issues which I have mentioned, because we have been struggling with stabilizing the economy, we have achieved that. We should now be talking about how the dividends of all of these things will trickle down to the average Nigerian.
All right.
So that, for me, I think is very critical. And this tax issue, we need to manage it pragmatically, so that it doesn't have a social backlash and it doesn't have a political backlash. We need to be very pragmatic in dealing with the implementation of this tax reform.
Okay.
We should start by focusing, in line with what we call Pareto principle, focusing on about 20% that can give you 90% of the revenue that you are looking for. Right. Whether you are talking of individuals or you are talking of businesses.
All right.
That is the structure all over the world. Focus on the few that can give you the maximum returns. Okay. All this idea of going for informal sector, going for SMEs, defining, we should play down on that, at least in the first year. We should be focusing on the formal sector, focusing on the high net worth individuals, focusing on the large enterprises.
All right.
You get more revenue. That is what we call revenue efficiency, as far as tax administration is concerned.
All right.
So I see a much better 2026.
Okay, and it is on that note we'd like to thank you very much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Thank you so very much. It's always very interesting to listen to you on these conversations. We thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. And Dr. Ifeanyi Oputa, you're in just 30 seconds, round off your projections for 2026.
Because we have stability in the currency market, and that means, and the Naira is essentially stable for now, I would love to see a situation where the government pays heed to the fact that most of the money that's come in is money that will vanish pre-election. It's just cowboy money. So let's use it while it's here, but not expect it to be here for the long term.
All right.
So use this short period that the money is in our economy to make the most of it before it's taken away from our economy.
Okay.
So we won't get into a bubble situation of the past 4 years and 8 years and 12 years.
All right. So thank you
These are
very
the
much.
things I'd like to say. Also, for the tax side, quickly, we've had a situation where about a few companies, like 10 companies in Nigeria, were given 16.1 trillion naira tax rebate in exchange for infrastructure. So now the small players who are providing infrastructure, why don't we see a way that, okay, you know what, if you're providing water for yourselves, you're providing light, what kind of rebate do we give you for the infrastructure you're providing? Okay. Because individual companies are doing the work of the state. How do we support them? How do we give them tax reliefs and incentives based on the infrastructure that they're providing that the state cannot provide?
Okay.
Because if we just tax people without looking at that thing, then we're not being fair, because we're giving other people, large players, rebates.
Okay.
On tax.
All right. Thank you so much, Engineer Ifeanyi Oputa, Director General, the Nigerian Association of Small-Scale Industrialists. Thank you so very much for being part of this conversation. We appreciate you. And back here at the studio, Dr. Kayode Okpefa, MD, Nigerian Railway Corporation. 30 seconds.
Yeah, what I would say simply is not different from what both of them have said. It's just so hard that as we move from this stability stage to the growth stage, and the new tax reform that is expected to bring more revenue for government should focus more on social infrastructure, as well as we move on the economic infrastructure. Social infrastructure in education, health, transport, and ensure that there's social redistribution of this wealth, so that all Nigerians have a feel of it.
So will you stick out your neck and say you're promising Nigerians a better rail system?
Definitely it's going to be better.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk about that soon. So we'd like to thank you for coming on this program, and we'll ask you to come again, and we'll talk about transportation. We hope you'll oblige us when we do request it.
I will.
Okay, thank you. And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. I do apologize. We couldn't get those phone calls. Such glitches can occur. But we want to promise that 2026, this program is going to get better. And we'll take care of those glitches, which many have observed in the past years. So thank you for being part of this. And this is the very first Tuesday Live in 2026. And I just like to say, yeah, the year has gone how many days now? But it's still in order to say, wish you a very rewarding and fruitful 2026. That's it for tonight. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.